She thought he was the driver, the billionaire who fell for the black woman. He texted me, "Hope your meeting went well." The ride was on me. I stared at my phone, confused. Drivers don't pay for rides. That's when I called the company. And the woman on the phone said, "That wasn't a driver, ma'am. That was Adam Walker. He owns Elite." My stomach dropped. I'd just spent 45 minutes telling a billionaire about my scrappy catering business. And he'd listen like I was the most interesting person he'd ever met. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think about the last time a story made you feel something real. Made your heart race. Made tears fall without permission. Made you remember why being human is so beautifully complicated. That's what we do here at CJ Stories. Whether you're returning or just discovering us, welcome home. This is your safe space for tears, laughter, hope, and everything in between. Today's story will take you somewhere unexpected. It'll make you think. It'll make you feel. And I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But here's the thing, the magic only works if you stay till the very end. No skipping. No rushing. Just you, me, and a story that might just change how you see the world. If it moves you, let me know you're here, subscribe, like, and share this with someone whose heart needs touching today. Ready? Let's step into today's story. The rain came down in sheets across downtown Seattle on June 8, 2024, turning the streets into rivers of gray. Helen Riley, 34 and running on 3 hours of sleep, stood under the overhang of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel with her phone pressed to her ear and her heart somewhere near her feet. "Please," she said quietly. "Just 2 more weeks. I can get you half by then." The landlord's voice crackled through. "I've given you 3 months already, Helen. I've got bills too." She closed her eyes. The catering van payment. The commercial kitchen rent. The suppliers who'd stopped extending credit. The math didn't work anymore, no matter how many times she ran it. "I understand," she said. "Thank you for your patience." She ended the call and stood there for a moment, watching the rain. Her reflection in the hotel's glass doors showed a woman in a black blazer that had seen better days, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, her makeup careful and professional. She looked like she had it together. She was drowning. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Helen checked her phone. The confirmation email from Elite Executive Services said her car would arrive at 2:15. It was 2:14. A man got out of the driver's seat. Tall, white, probably late 30s. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that fit well enough to suggest he spent time in a gym. His brown hair was slightly damp from the rain, and he had the kind of face that would photograph well but somehow looked better in person. He walked around to open the back door, and that's when Helen noticed he wasn't wearing a suit. Most drivers for the executive service wore suits. "Ms. Riley?" he asked. "That's me." She hurried toward the car, her portfolio bag held over her head against the rain. He smiled. "I'm Adam. Let's get you out of this weather." She slid into the back seat, grateful for the warmth. The interior smelled like leather and something clean, maybe cedar. Adam got back in the driver's seat and pulled smoothly into traffic. "Pike Place Market, right?" he said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Yes, please. The main entrance if you can get close." "I'll do my best. This rain isn't helping traffic." Helen pulled out her tablet and tried to focus on her presentation notes. She had exactly 45 minutes to convince the events coordinator at the Market Foundation that Riley's Catering could handle their summer concert series. It was the kind of contract that could save her business. Or at least buy her enough time to figure out what came next. "Big meeting?" Adam asked. She looked up. His eyes were gray-blue, the color of the sound on a cloudy day. He was watching her in the mirror with what looked like genuine interest. "Is it that obvious? You've read the same page 3 times." Helen laughed despite herself. "That obvious? Want to practice your pitch? I've got nowhere to be for the next hour. You'd be bored in 30 seconds. Try me." There was something easy about him. Maybe it was because she'd never see him again after today, or maybe it was just the rain and the warm car and the fact that she was too tired to keep her walls up. "It's a catering contract," she said. "Summer concert series at Pike Place Market. 22 events over 3 months. It's the kind of job that could change everything for my company." "How long have you been in business?" "For years. Started in my mama's kitchen with a Costco membership and a prayer." Adam smiled at that. "Sounds like most successful businesses I know." "We're not successful yet. We're scrappy. There's a difference. Scrappy is good. Scrappy means you know how to survive." The Mercedes moved smoothly through downtown traffic. Adam drove like someone who was comfortable behind the wheel but not in a hurry to prove anything. Helen found herself watching him instead of her notes. "What about you?" she asked. "You enjoy driving for Elite?" Something flickered across his face. "Amusement, maybe. I'm actually just helping out a friend today. His regular driver called in sick, and I had some free time. That's nice of you. He's done plenty for me over the years. It's the least I could do. They stopped at a red light near the waterfront. A street musician played saxophone under an awning, the notes carrying even through the rain. Adam rolled down his window an inch and dropped a $20 bill into the man's case. That was generous, Helen said. Guys out here in this weather. That takes dedication. The light changed. Adam navigated through the market district with the ease of someone who knew Seattle well. He found a spot near the main entrance where the overhang would keep her dry. This work? He asked. This is perfect. Thank you. Helen gathered her things, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do I look like I know what I'm doing? Adam turned in his seat to look at her directly, not through the mirror. His expression was serious. You look like someone who's built something from nothing and isn't about to let it fall apart now. Something in Helen's chest loosened. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear something like that. Thank you, she said quietly. Good luck in there. Helen stepped out of the car and into the covered walkway. She made it 3 steps before she turned back, but the Mercedes was already pulling away into traffic. She stood there for a moment, watching it disappear, then shook her head and walked into the building. The meeting was in a conference room overlooking Elliott Bay. Margaret Chen, the events coordinator, was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 50s who had a reputation for being tough but fair. Ms. Riley, she said, shaking Helen's hand. I've heard good things about your work. Thank you for seeing me. They sat down, and Helen opened her portfolio. For the next 30 minutes, she walked Margaret through her proposal. Sample menus for each event, pricing that was competitive but not desperate, references from clients who'd been happy with her work. This is thorough, Margaret said, flipping through the packet. But I have to be honest with you. We've used the same caterer for the past 5 years. They're reliable, and our audience knows what to expect. Helen nodded. She'd expected this. I understand. But your audience is changing. The market's demographic studies show you're bringing in more young professionals, more diverse crowds. My menus reflect that. Southern comfort food with Pacific Northwest ingredients. Familiar flavors with local sourcing. Margaret looked interested. Go on. Your current caterer does standard event food. It's fine. But is fine what you want for the market's biggest summer event? Or do you want food that people talk about, that brings them back? What makes you think you can deliver that? Helen thought about her mama's kitchen. About learning to make her grandmother's recipes while watching cooking shows about farm-to-table cuisine. About the first time someone told her they'd never tasted anything like her bourbon peach cobbler. Because I learned to cook from women who knew how to make magic with whatever they had, she said. And I learned business from people who taught me that you don't compete by being cheaper. You compete by being better. Margaret studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. I like you, Ms. Riley. Give me a week to talk to my board. I can't make promises, but I'll present your proposal. That's all I can ask. They shook hands again. Helen walked out of the building feeling lighter than she had in months. Not safe yet, but hopeful. There was a difference. She pulled out her phone to call for a ride back to her commercial kitchen. The Elite Executive Services app was still open from earlier. She was about to close it when she noticed something odd. The charge for her ride showed $0. Helen refreshed the screen. Still zero. She checked her email. There was a receipt from Elite, marked paid in full, with a note that said, courtesy of a friend. She stood there in the rain, staring at her phone, trying to figure out what had just happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hope your meeting went well. The ride was on me. You look like you could use one less thing to worry about today. Adam. Helen read it twice. Then a third time. A driver didn't do that. Drivers didn't have access to the payment system. And they definitely didn't pay for rides out of their own pocket. She thought about the way he'd carried himself. The expensive watch she'd noticed when he'd opened her door. The car that was too nice even for an executive service. The easy confidence of someone used to making decisions. Oh no, she said out loud. She called Elite Executive Services. A cheerful voice answered. Hi, I had a ride earlier today with a driver named Adam. I just wanted to confirm his last name for my records. I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have any drivers named Adam. Who was your assigned driver? The confirmation said car number 732. That's David Patel's car, but he called in sick this morning. We had to send a replacement. Let me check. A pause. Oh my. That wasn't a replacement driver, ma'am. That was Adam Walker. Helen's stomach dropped. Adam Walker. Yes, ma'am. He owns the company. Well, he owns a lot of companies. Elite is just one of them. He called this morning and said he'd cover David's routes personally since we were short-staffed. I see. Thank you. Helen ended the call and stood there in the rain, which was starting to soak through her blazer. Adam Valket. She'd heard that name before. Everyone in Seattle had heard that name. Walker Technologies. The app that had revolutionized supply chain logistics. The billionaire who'd started his first company in a University of Washington dorm room and sold it for 8 figures before he was 30. She'd spent 45 minutes telling a billionaire about her scrappy little catering business and her Costco membership. She'd asked him if he enjoyed driving for Elite. Oh God, she muttered. Her phone buzzed again. For what it's worth, I really do think you're going to get that contract. And I'd love to buy you dinner sometime. No car service, no business talk. Just 2 people getting to know each other. If you're interested, text me back. If not, I understand, and I promise I won't use my vast resources to track you down. That would be creepy. Adam. Helen read the message 4 times. Her first instinct was to say no. This was Adam Walker. They existed in completely different worlds. She was 34 years old and fighting to keep her small business alive. He was a billionaire who apparently spent his Saturday afternoons driving strangers around Seattle in the rain. But she thought about the way he'd listened to her in the car. Really listened, like what she was saying mattered. The way he'd tipped the street musician without making a show of it. The way he'd looked at her when she asked if she seemed like she knew what she was doing, and told her the truth in a way that made her believe it. She typed out a response before she could talk herself out of it. Dinner sounds nice. But I have 2 conditions. 1, we split the check. 2, you have to tell me why you were really driving that car today. The response came back in less than a minute. Deal. How's Friday at 7? I know a place in Ballard with the best fish tacos you've ever had. Very casual. And I promise I'll tell you the whole story. Helen smiled despite herself. Friday works. Send me the address. She put her phone away and looked out at Elliott Bay. The rain was starting to let up, and patches of blue were appearing in the clouds. In the distance, the Olympic Mountains were emerging from the mist. Her phone buzzed one more time. By the way, that thing you said about not competing by being cheaper, competing by being better? That's exactly right. I have a feeling you're going to do really well, Helen Riley. She read it standing there in the clearing rain, and something warm bloomed in her chest. Not hope exactly, because hope felt too fragile for what this was. More like possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. Helen pulled up the rideshare app to get back to her kitchen. She had prep work to do, and suppliers to call, and about 1,000 things to worry about before Friday. But for the first time in months, she found herself thinking about something other than survival. She was thinking about gray blue eyes and an easy smile and the way it had felt to talk to someone who listened like her words mattered. She was thinking about Friday night. The rideshare pulled up. Helen got in, gave the driver her address, and pulled out her tablet to work on her menu proposals. But she kept catching herself smiling at nothing, and the numbers on the screen kept blurring into thoughts of fish tacos in Ballard and a man who drove strangers around in the rain because his friend needed help. Good day, the driver asked, catching her smile in the rearview mirror. Helen looked up and met the driver's eyes. Yeah, she said. I think it might have been. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. 2 weeks later, on June 22, 2024, Helen stood in front of her closet at 6:30 in the evening and second-guessed every decision she'd made in the past 14 days. She'd said yes to dinner with a billionaire. She, Helen Marie Riley, who currently had $412 in her personal checking account and a business that was one bad month away from closing its doors forever. What had she been thinking? Her phone buzzed on the dresser. Her best friend Tanya's face appeared on the screen. You better not be canceling, Tanya said when Helen answered. I'm not canceling. I'm just reconsidering my life choices. Helen. The man drove you to your meeting in the rain. He paid for your ride. He's been texting you every day for 2 weeks like a normal person, not like some rich guy who thinks his money makes him interesting. Go to dinner. What if we have nothing to talk about? You've been texting for 2 weeks. You have plenty to talk about. That was true. After that first exchange, Adam had texted her the next morning. Nothing pushy, just a simple, how's your Sunday going? It had turned into a conversation about the best breakfast spots in Seattle, which had turned into a debate about whether pancakes or waffles were superior, which had somehow led to Adam sending her a picture of himself at a diner in Fremont with both pancakes and waffles on the table with the caption, I'm a man of science. Had to test both hypotheses. The texts had continued. Easy conversations about small things. The book he was reading. The new menu item she was testing. A funny sign he'd seen. A bakery she recommended. Nothing heavy, nothing that felt like either of them was trying too hard. Just two people getting to know each other in the spaces between their days. Fine, Helen said. I'm going. But if this is a disaster, I'm blaming you. If this is a disaster, I'll buy you a whole bottle of wine. Now go. You look beautiful. Text me when you get there. Helen looked at herself in the mirror one more time. She'd chosen a rust-colored dress that brought out the warmth in her brown skin, paired with her favorite denim jacket and ankle boots. Casual but put together. Her hair was down in loose curls, and she'd kept her makeup simple. She looked like herself. That felt important somehow. The restaurant Adam had chosen was called The Walrus and the Carpenter, tucked into Ballard's main strip. Helen had walked past it a dozen times but had never been inside. Through the windows, she could see exposed brick and warm lighting and a long oyster bar where people sat elbow to elbow. Adam was waiting outside. He wore dark jeans and a blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up, and when he saw her, his whole face changed. That smile again, the one that made him look younger than 37. Hi, he said. Yusuf. You found it okay? I've lived in Seattle for 12 years. I know where Ballard is. He laughed. Fair point. Come on, I got us a table in the back where it's quieter. The hostess led them through the crowded restaurant to a small table near the kitchen. It was intimate without being presumptuous, close enough to talk without the whole restaurant listening in. So, Helen said once they'd sat down. You owe me a story. Why were you really driving that car? Adam picked up his menu, then set it down again. Honest answer? That's generally what I prefer. David, the guy who owns Elite, is a friend from college. We were roommates at UW. When I started my first company, he invested everything he had, which was about $5,000 at the time. It kept me going for 2 crucial months. And now you drive his cars when he's short-staffed? Now I do whatever he needs when he needs it. That day, he called me at 6 in the morning in a panic because 2 drivers had called in sick and he had a full schedule. I had a meeting that didn't start until 4, so I figured why not. The server came by. Adam ordered fish tacos and a local IPA. Helen got the oysters and a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. What about you? Adam asked when the server left. Tell me about Riley's catering. How did you end up starting a business in your mama's kitchen? Helen took a sip of water, buying herself a moment. She'd told this story before, but usually to potential clients or investors. Making it sound impressive and strategic. Leaving out the messy parts. My dad died in 2019, she said. He was 58. Heart attack, completely unexpected. I was working in marketing at the time, had this job I was supposed to want. Good salary, benefits, the whole thing. I'm sorry about your dad. Thank you. He was a good man. Worked at Boeing for 30 years, loved terrible puns, made the best barbecue ribs in Washington state. Adam smiled at that. Anyway, after he died, I just couldn't make myself care about marketing campaigns for tech startups anymore. Everything felt pointless. My mama was struggling too. She'd been married to my dad for 36 years, and suddenly she was alone in this house that felt too quiet. The server brought their drinks. Helen took a sip of her wine before continuing. So I started coming over on weekends to cook with her. It was something to do, you know? A way to feel close to my dad, because he'd loved her cooking. And one weekend, I made his ribs for a friend's birthday party. People kept asking if they could hire me for their events. And you thought, why not? More like my mama thought, why not? She's the one who told me I should stop talking about it and actually do it. She co-signed my first business loan even though I told her not to. Smart woman. The smartest. She still tests all my new recipes. Won't let me put anything on a menu until it meets her standards. Their food arrived. The fish tacos looked exactly as good as Adam had promised, and Helen's oysters were fresh and perfect. Okay, you were right about these tacos, Helen said after her first bite. I don't like to brag, but I know my Seattle food. Says the billionaire. Adam paused mid-bite. You looked me up. The woman at Elite told me who you were when I called to ask about the ride. Did you think I wouldn't? I was hoping we could get through at least the appetizers before my net worth came up. Is that usually a problem for you? Adam set down his taco and leaned back in his chair. You want the real answer? I keep telling you, that's what I prefer. Yes. It's always a problem. People either want something from me, or they're intimidated, or they're trying to figure out what I'm worth before they decide if I'm worth their time. It gets old. Helen studied him across the table. He looked tired when he said it, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. For what it's worth, I Googled you for about 10 minutes, decided you seemed normal enough in interviews, and then I went back to worrying about my own life. I don't have the energy to be intimidated by you. Adam laughed, and the tiredness disappeared. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me in months. Your bar is too low. Probably. They ate in comfortable silence for a minute. Around them, the restaurant buzzed with conversation and the clink of glasses and the sound of the kitchen sending out plates. Can I ask you something? Adam said. Sure. That day in the car, when you asked if you looked like you knew what you were doing. What was that about? Helen considered deflecting, but something about the way he was looking at her made her want to tell the truth. I was about to lose everything, she said quietly. My landlord was threatening eviction. I had suppliers who wouldn't work with me anymore because I couldn't pay on time. That contract at Pike Place Market was my last real shot at keeping the business alive. And? Helen smiled. I got it. Margaret called me 3 days after our meeting. They're going with my proposal for the whole summer series. Helen, that's amazing. It buys me time. 6 months, maybe a year if I'm careful. Time to build something sustainable instead of just scrambling to survive. Adam raised his glass. To buying time. Helen clinked her glass against his. To buying time. So what happens after the summer series? Adam asked. I don't know yet. Maybe I try to get more contracts like it. Maybe I open an actual restaurant instead of just doing catering. Maybe I fail spectacularly and end up back in marketing, telling people why their app is going to change the world. You won't fail. You don't know that. I know you built a business from nothing in your mama's kitchen. I know you got a contract with Pike Place Market by being better than the competition, not cheaper. I know you show up even when things are hard. That's not someone who fails. Helen felt something catch in her throat. She took another sip of wine to cover it. What about you? She asked, changing the subject. What does a billionaire do with his time when he's not driving strangers around Seattle? I run a tech company. We do supply chain logistics software. It's incredibly boring to explain at dinner parties. Try me. You really want to know? I asked, didn't I? So Adam told her about Walker Technologies, but not the way she'd heard people talk about their companies before. He didn't brag about revenue or growth or market share. Instead, he talked about the problem he'd been trying to solve, how to help small businesses compete with giants like Amazon by giving them access to the same kind of logistics tools. The big companies have whole teams managing their supply chains, he explained. They can predict demand, optimize shipping, reduce waste. Small businesses can't afford that. So they lose money on inefficiency, and then they can't compete on price, and then they close. I wanted to fix that. And did you? We're getting there. The software helps, but it's not enough. That's why I started the Accelerator program. What's that? We identify promising small businesses and give them access to our tools for free for the first year. Plus mentorship, connections, sometimes capital. We just brought in our third cohort. 20 companies, everything from organic farms to clothing manufacturers to, yes, a few catering companies. Helen's mind was already racing ahead. How do you apply? Adam Similit. I'll send you the information. But you don't need it. You're already doing everything right. I'm barely keeping my head above water. That's year 4. Everyone's barely keeping their head above water in year 4. Year 5 is usually when it clicks. Speaking from experience? Speaking from having almost lost everything in year 4 of my first company. I was 26, convinced I was about to change the world, and suddenly I couldn't make payroll. I had to borrow money from my parents, which was humbling in ways I can't fully express. What happened? I figured out I was trying to do too much. I narrowed my focus, fixed the one thing we did really well, and stopped trying to be everything to everyone. 6 months later, we got acquired. It wasn't the outcome I'd planned, but it gave me the capital to start Walker Technologies the right way. The server came by to clear their plates and offer dessert. They both said yes to the chocolate pâte de crème. Can I ask you something personal? Helen said when the server left. Seems fair, since I asked you something personal. Why aren't you married? Or dating someone seriously? I'm assuming you're not, since you asked me to dinner, but maybe I'm wrong. You're not wrong. I'm single. Very single. And the answer is complicated. I've got time. Adam was quiet for a moment, turning his beer glass in his hands. I was engaged once. Her name was Victoria. This was back in 2018, when the company was taking off, but I wasn't rich yet, just doing well. She was great. Smart, beautiful, understood the demands of building a business. What happened? I proposed, she said yes, we set a date. And then we got acquired, and suddenly I had more money than I knew what to do with, and Victoria started planning a wedding that cost more than my parents' house. Which was fine, except she also started planning a life that looked nothing like what we'd talked about. Helen waited. She wanted to quit her job, move to Medina, join the right clubs, go to the right parties. She wanted the life that came with the money. And I realized she was more in love with the idea of being a billionaire's wife than she was with me. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 6 years ago. I'm over it. But it made me cautious about dating. I never know if someone's interested in me or interested in what I can give them. The dessert arrived, rich and perfect. They shared it in silence for a minute. For what it's worth, Helen said, I can't afford to date you for your money. I'm too busy trying to keep my own business alive. Adam laughed so hard he almost choked on his wine. That's the best reason anyone's ever given me. Plus, you know what it's like to almost lose everything. That's not something you can fake. No, Adam said quietly. It's not. They finished dessert and argued good-naturedly about the check. Helen insisted on paying half. Adam suggested they split it, but he'd choose where they went next time. Bold of you to assume there'll be a next time, Helen said. Is there going to be a next time? Helen looked at him across the table. At the way he was watching her like her answer actually mattered. At the slight nervousness in his expression that made him seem less like a billionaire and more like just a man hoping he hadn't misread the evening. Yeah, she said. I think there will be. They walked out into the Ballard evening. It was almost 9:30, and the summer light was just starting to fade. The street was busy with people moving between bars and restaurants, and the air smelled like salt water and grilled food. Can I walk you to your car? Adam asked. I took the bus. Let me drive you home then. You don't have to do that. I know. I want to. His car was parked a block away. The same black Mercedes from 2 weeks ago. He opened her door, and Helen slid into the passenger seat this time, not the back. The drive to her apartment in Columbia City took 20 minutes. They talked the whole way, easy conversation about nothing important. A new coffee shop that had opened near her place. A concert he was thinking about going to. The fact that neither of them had been to the San Juan Islands despite living in Seattle for years. We should fix that, Adam said as he pulled up in front of her building. What, go to the San Juans? Why not? We could take the ferry, spend a day exploring. There's this little town on Orcas Island with incredible restaurants. That sounds suspiciously like a third date. Is that a problem? Helen looked at him in the dim light of the car. No. That's not a problem. Adam similet. Good. Helen reached for the door handle, then stopped. Thank you for tonight. I had a really good time. Me too. She got out of the car and walked to her building's entrance. When she turned back, Adam was still there, waiting to make sure she got inside safely. She waved. He waved back. Inside her apartment, Helen dropped her bag on the couch and pulled out her phone. 3 texts from Tanya. How did it go? Hello? Are you alive? If you don't text me back in the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Helen smiled and typed back. It was perfect. We're going out again. The response was immediate. Tell me everything. But before Helen could reply, another text came through. This one from Adam. I know I just dropped you off 2 minutes ago, but I'm already looking forward to seeing you again. Sleep well, Helen Riley. Helen read it 3 times, then saved his number under his actual name instead of just the number she'd been texting for 2 weeks. She fell asleep that night thinking about fish tacos and ferry rides and the way Adam had looked at her when she told him about almost losing everything. Like he understood. Like he'd been there too. Like maybe, possibly, this thing between them could be something real. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. By mid-August 2024, Helen had learned 3 important things about dating Adam Walker. 1. He was a morning person who sent her sunrise photos from his runs along the waterfront, usually with terrible puns about seizing the day that made her groan and smile at the same time. 2. He was surprisingly competitive about board games, which she discovered on their 4th date when he'd nearly flipped the Scrabble board after she'd played Quixotic on a triple-word score. 3. He was the kind of man who remembered small things. Her favorite coffee order. The fact that she was allergic to shellfish. That her mama's birthday was coming up in September. That she always got quiet on Thursdays because that was the day her dad had died. It was Thursday, August 15, 2024, and Helen was in her commercial kitchen prepping for a wedding reception when her phone rang. Adam's name appeared on the screen. Hey, she answered, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear while she continued chopping vegetables. How are you doing? I'm okay. Busy. This wedding on Saturday is going to be huge. I know you're working, but I wanted to check in. And to tell you I'm thinking about you. Something warm spread through Helen's chest. Thank you. Dinner tonight? Nothing fancy. I'll bring takeout to your place and we can watch that documentary you mentioned. That sounds perfect. After they hung up, Helen's assistant Maya looked over from where she was preparing desserts. That was him, wasn't it? You get this smile. I do not get a smile. You absolutely do. It's disgusting. I love it. Helen threw a dish towel at her. But Maya was right. She was smiling. The Pike Place Market Summer Concert Series had gone better than Helen had dared to hope. The crowds loved her food. She'd gotten write-ups in 2 local food blogs and 1 small piece in Seattle Magazine. More importantly, she'd gotten inquiries about future events. Real, paying work that didn't feel like a desperate scramble. For the first time in years, her business felt sustainable. And then there was Adam. They'd been seeing each other for almost 2 months now, and it felt easy in a way Helen hadn't experienced before. He fit into her life without demanding she change it. He showed up at the market sometimes during her events, not to hover but just to see her for a few minutes between his meetings. He'd met her mama 3 weeks ago, and the two of them had spent an hour talking about the best way to make peach cobbler while Helen watched in amused disbelief. That evening, Adam arrived at her apartment at 7 with Thai food from her favorite place in the International District. He'd remembered her usual order without asking. They ate on her couch with the documentary playing in the background, but neither of them paid much attention to it. They were too busy talking about their days, about the ridiculous email Adam's lawyer had sent him, about the bride who'd called Helen in a panic because she'd decided to add 50 more guests 2 days before the wedding. Can you handle 50 more people? Adam asked. I can handle it. It's just going to be a long couple of days. Let me help. Helen looked at him. You want to help prep food for a wedding? Why not? I can chop vegetables. I can follow instructions. And I have nothing scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Adam, you run a multi-billion-dollar company. Which is exactly why I can take a Friday afternoon off to help my girlfriend prep food. Helen's heart did a small flip at the word girlfriend. They hadn't officially defined what they were yet, had been dancing around it for weeks. Is that what I am? She asked. Adam set down his food and turned to face her fully. I'd like you to be. If you want that too. I do want that. Good. He kissed her, soft and sweet, tasting like basil and coconut. So can I help you tomorrow? You're really going to spend your Friday afternoon in a commercial kitchen chopping onions? I'm really going to spend my Friday afternoon with you. The onions are just a bonus. The next afternoon, Adam showed up at her kitchen in jeans and an old UW t-shirt, ready to work. Helen put him on vegetable prep, and for 2 hours, he chopped and diced and measured while she worked on the main dishes. He was competent and careful, and he didn't complain once. Maya watched them work together with barely concealed amusement. You know what's wild, she said during a break. Watching a billionaire julienne carrots in a basement kitchen in Georgetown. I'm not that good at it, Adam said, examining his work critically. You're doing fine, Helen assured him. Better than fine. Her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the number was local and she was expecting a call from a potential client. This is Helen Riley. Ms. Riley, this is Jennifer Park from Seattle Business Journal. I'm working on a piece about the local food scene, and your name keeps coming up. I'd love to interview you. Helen's heart started racing. That would be great. When were you thinking? How about next week? We could meet at your commercial kitchen, get some photos of you working. They scheduled the interview for Tuesday. When Helen hung up, she realized her hands were shaking. You okay? Adam asked. That was Seattle Business Journal. They want to interview me. Adam Goodinut. Helen, that's incredible. It's just a local publication. It's a big deal. This is how it starts. One article leads to another, leads to more clients, leads to growth. Maya was practically bouncing. We need to deep clean this place before Tuesday. And Helen, you need to plan what you're going to say. The weekend wedding went smoothly despite the last-minute guest additions. The bride was happy, the food was a hit, and Helen even got a tip that was more than her usual fee. She was riding high on Sunday night when she got home and saw she had several missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. The voicemail made her blood run cold. Ms. Riley, this is Robert Chen from Pacific Northwest Health Department. We received a complaint about possible food safety violations at your August 10th event at Pike Place Market. We'll need to schedule an inspection of your commercial kitchen facility. Please call me back Monday morning. Helen played the message 3 times, her mind racing. August 10th. That was almost a week ago. She'd served over 200 people that night, and nobody had gotten sick. She ran a clean kitchen, followed every health code to the letter. This had to be a mistake. She called Adam without thinking. Hey, I was just about to text you, he answered, his voice warm. How did the wedding go? I need to tell you something. The warmth disappeared, replaced by concern. What's wrong? She told him about the voicemail. As she talked, she started pacing her small apartment, her free hand clenched into a fist. Did anyone get sick at that event? Adam asked when she finished. No. I always follow up with clients, and I haven't heard a single complaint. Adam, if they find violations, even if they're minor, it could tank my reputation. I could lose the rest of my summer contracts. I could lose everything I've built. That's not going to happen. You run a clean operation. You don't know that. What if I missed something? What if there was cross-contamination I didn't catch? What if? Helen. Stop. Take a breath. She stopped pacing and sat down on her couch. Her leg was bouncing anxiously. I have a friend who used to work for the health department, Adam said. Let me reach out to him, see what he knows about this complaint. And I can recommend a good lawyer if you need one. I can't afford a lawyer. Then I'll. No. The word came out sharper than she intended. I'm not taking money from you. There was a pause on the line. I wasn't offering money. I was offering to connect you with someone who might do some initial consulting pro bono. Helen closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm just stressed. I know. It's going to be okay. Call the health department tomorrow, schedule the inspection, and show them what I already know, which is that you run a professional operation. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Helen tried to sleep but couldn't. She kept running through every detail of the August 10th event, trying to figure out what could have possibly prompted a complaint. Monday morning, she called the health department. The inspector, Robert Chen, was professional but didn't give her much information. We take all complaints seriously, Ms. Riley. The inspection is routine procedure. How does Wednesday at 10 work for you? That's fine. Can you tell me what the specific complaint was? I'm not at liberty to discuss that until after the inspection. Helen spent Monday and Tuesday in a state of controlled panic. She deep-cleaned the kitchen even though it was already spotless. She organized all her documentation, her temperature logs, her supplier certifications, her staff training records. Everything was in order. It had to be. The Seattle Business Journal interview on Tuesday should have been exciting, but Helen could barely focus. Jennifer Park was kind and enthusiastic, asking great questions about Helen's journey and her food philosophy. But in the back of Helen's mind, all she could think about was Wednesday's inspection. After the interview, Helen went to visit her mama. She found her in the garden behind the house where Helen had grown up, tending her tomato plants. "Baby girl," her mama said when she saw her. "What's wrong?" Helen told her everything. About the health department complaint, about the inspection, about her fear that someone was trying to sabotage her business. Her mama listened quietly, then gestured for Helen to sit down on the porch steps beside her. "You remember when your daddy was trying to make foreman at Boeing?" she asked. "Vaguely. I was pretty young. There was this other man up for the same position. He started spreading rumors about your daddy, saying he was cutting corners on safety checks. It was completely false, but it got back to management. They launched an investigation. What happened? Your daddy's work spoke for itself. 20 years of perfect safety records. Colleagues who vouched for him. Documentation of every single inspection he'd ever done. The truth came out, and he got the promotion. What about the other guy? He got fired for making false accusations. The thing is, baby, people who try to tear you down usually do it because they're threatened by you. And the truth always comes out if you've been doing things right." Helen leaned her head on her mama's shoulder. "What if I missed something? What if there really was a violation? Then you fix it and move forward. But I've seen your kitchen, Helen. I know how you run your business. You're just like your daddy. You do things right." Wednesday morning, Helen arrived at her kitchen an hour early. Maya was already there, nervous energy radiating off her. "Everything looks perfect," Maya said. "I checked everything twice." Robertson arrived exactly at 10. He was a thin man in his 40s with a clipboard and a serious expression. He introduced himself and got straight to work. For 2 hours, he went through every inch of the kitchen. He checked temperatures in the refrigerators and freezers. He examined her storage areas, her prep stations, her cleaning supplies. He reviewed her documentation with excruciating attention to detail. Helen's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Adam. "Thinking about you. You've got this." Finally, Robertson set down his clipboard and turned to Helen. "Ms. Riley, I'll be honest with you. Based on the complaint we received, I expected to find multiple violations. The complaint alleged improper food storage, inadequate temperature control, and unsanitary conditions." Helen's heart sank. And I found none of that. Your facility exceeds health code requirements. Your documentation is meticulous. Whatever prompted this complaint, it wasn't based on the reality of your operation." The relief was so intense Helen had to sit down. "So I'm clear?" "You're clear. I'll file my report today. You should receive a copy within a week, along with information about who filed the complaint. After he left, Helen and Maya sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Maya started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that Helen soon joined. "We're okay," Maya said. "We're actually okay." Helen's phone rang. Adam's name appeared on the screen. "How did it go?" he asked immediately. "We passed. No violations at all." She heard him exhale. "I knew you would. I'm so proud of you. The inspector said I'll get information about who filed the complaint. I want to know who did this." "Helen. Someone tried to ruin my business, Adam. I want to know who." "I understand. Just promise me you'll be careful. If someone's trying to sabotage you, confronting them directly might not be the best move." They talked for a few more minutes before Helen had to get back to work. She had an event that evening, and despite the relief of passing the inspection, she felt unsettled. Someone had filed a false complaint against her. Someone wanted her to fail. The question was who and why. The answer came the following Monday, August 19, 2024, when Helen received the official inspection report in the mail. Attached to it was the complaint form, including the name of the person who'd filed it. Susan Morrison. The owner of Morrison Catering, the company that had been doing the Pike Place market events for the past 5 years before Helen got the contract. Helen stared at the name, anger building in her chest. Susan Morrison had tried to destroy her reputation with false accusations because she'd lost a contract. She called Adam without thinking. "Susan Morrison filed the complaint," she said when he answered. "The woman whose contract I took." "Helen, I know you're angry, but I'm going to talk to her." "That's not a good idea." "I don't care if it's a good idea. She tried to ruin me, Adam. She can't just get away with that." "What are you going to do, confront her? What if she retaliates? What else can she do? She already tried her worst, and it didn't work. Please think about this. Talk to a lawyer first. Document everything. Don't do something in anger that you'll regret." But Helen was already grabbing her keys. "I have to go." "Helen, wait." She hung up and drove to Morrison Catering's location in Fremont. The anger that had been simmering all week had boiled over, and all she could think about was confronting the woman who'd tried to destroy everything she'd built. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. Helen sat in her car outside Morrison Catering for 15 minutes, her hands gripping the steering wheel, before she finally admitted Adam was right. Confronting Susan Morrison in anger would accomplish nothing. It would make her look unprofessional, and it could give Susan more ammunition to use against her. The health department had cleared her. She had documentation proving the complaint was false. That was enough. She drove back to her kitchen, the anger slowly draining away and leaving something heavier in its place. Exhaustion. The kind that came from months of fighting just to keep her head above water. Maya took one look at her face when she walked in and said, "Go home. I can handle prep for tomorrow." "I should stay." "Helen, you look like you haven't slept in a week. Go home. Take a bath. Eat something that isn't leftovers from an event. I've got this." Helen didn't have the energy to argue. She went home, took Maya's advice about the bath, and fell asleep on her couch at 7:30 in the evening. She woke up to her phone buzzing. Adam's name on the screen. She'd ignored his calls all afternoon. "Hey," she answered, her voice rough with sleep. "You're alive. That's good. I didn't go in." "I know. Maya texted me. She was worried about you." Helen sat up, rubbing her eyes. "You have my assistant's number?" "She gave it to me last week when I was helping at the kitchen. In case of emergencies." This felt like an emergency. "I'm fine." "Helen." She was quiet for a moment. Outside her window, the August evening was fading into dusk. "I'm not fine. But I will be. Can I come over?" "You don't have to do that." "I know. I want to." 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. Adam stood there with a bag from her favorite Thai place and a pint of ice cream from Molly Moon's. "I'm starting to think you're trying to solve all my problems with food," Helen said, letting him in. "Is it working?" "A little bit." They ate on her couch, the same documentary from last week still paused on her TV. Adam didn't push her to talk, just sat beside her and made her laugh with a story about a disastrous presentation one of his engineers had given that afternoon. Finally, Helen set down her food and turned to face him. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Of Susan Morrison?" "Of all of it. I passed the inspection, which is great, but what if she tries something else? What if the next thing she does actually works? I've put everything into this business, Adam. For years of my life. Every dollar I had. My mama's co-signed loan. If I fail now, I don't just lose the business. I lose her house too." Adam's expression shifted. Wait. Your mama's house is collateral on your business loan. It was the only way the bank would approve me. I told her not to do it, but she insisted. Does she know about the health department complaint? No. And I'm not telling her. She already worries enough. Adam was quiet for a moment, his jaw tight. How much do you owe on the loan? That's not why I'm telling you this. I'm not offering to pay it. I'm just asking. Helen hesitated, then said, $42,000. I've been paying it down, but it's slow going. And if the business fails? The bank can take her house. The house my daddy bought in 1995. The house I grew up in. The house that's the only thing she has left of him. Her voice cracked on the last word. Adam pulled her close, and Helen let herself lean into him, let herself feel the weight of everything she'd been carrying alone. I won't let that happen, Adam said quietly. Helen pulled back to look at him. You can't fix this with money. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about helping you build something sustainable so you never have to worry about that loan again. Adam, just listen. The accelerator program I told you about. The next application period opens in 2 weeks. You should apply. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's a competitive program. We get hundreds of applications and only accept 20 businesses. But you'd be a strong candidate. Your growth over the past 4 months, the Pike Place market contract, the press you're getting. That's exactly the kind of trajectory we look for. Helen wanted to say no. She wanted to prove she could do this completely on her own, without any help from anyone, especially not from the man she was dating. But she thought about her mama's house. About the 4 years she'd already invested. About the fact that her pride wasn't worth risking everything. What would it involve, she asked. Free access to our supply chain software for a year. It would help you optimize your ordering, reduce waste, manage inventory better. Plus mentorship from people who've built successful food businesses. And connections to potential investors if you decide you want to expand. No direct funding? Not from the program, no. Though some of the mentors are also angel investors. But that would be completely separate and entirely your decision. Helen was quiet, thinking it through. I'll send you the application, Adam said. Look it over. Think about it. If you decide to apply, great. If not, that's fine too. But don't say no just because we're dating. What if people think I only got in because of you? Then they don't understand how the program works. I'm on the advisory board, but I don't make the selection decisions. We have an independent committee for that, specifically to avoid conflicts of interest. Helen looked at him, at the earnest expression on his face, and felt something shift in her chest. He wasn't trying to fix her problems. He was offering her tools to fix them herself. Okay, she said. Send me the application. Adam smiled and kissed her forehead. You're going to be fine, Helen Riley. Better than fine. They spent the rest of the evening talking about other things. About the Seattle Business Journal article that was coming out next week. About Adam's sister who was visiting from Portland and wanted to meet Helen. About the trip to the San Juan Islands they kept talking about but hadn't scheduled yet. When Adam left at 11, Helen felt lighter than she had in days. Not fixed, but hopeful. There was a difference. The next morning, Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, Helen woke up to an email from Adam with the accelerator program application attached. She poured coffee and started reading through it. The application was thorough but not unreasonable. Financial statements, business plan, growth projections, references. Things she already had or could pull together. She was halfway through the first section when her phone rang. An unknown Seattle number. This is Helen Riley. Ms. Riley, this is David Park from Seattle Business Journal. I'm calling about the interview we did last week. Helen's stomach dropped. The way he said it didn't sound good. Is there a problem? I wanted to give you a heads up before the article runs. We received some information that we felt obligated to investigate. What kind of information? About your relationship with Adam Walker. And questions about whether his influence helped you secure the Pike Place market contract. Helen felt like she'd been punched. That's not true. I got that contract on my own merit. Adam and I didn't even meet until after I'd already submitted my proposal. I believe you, Ms. Riley. And we did our due diligence. We spoke to Margaret Chen at Pike Place Market, and she confirmed that she'd never heard of Adam Walker when she selected your proposal. She made the decision based solely on your submission. Then what's the problem? The problem is that the allegation exists, and we have to address it in the article. We're not saying it's true, but we have to mention that questions were raised and how we verified the facts. This is going to make me look bad no matter how you write it. David Park sighed. I'm sorry, Ms. Riley. For what it's worth, the article is still very positive about your business and your food. But yes, this complicates the narrative. After she hung up, Helen sat at her kitchen table and tried to process what had just happened. Someone had called the Seattle Business Journal to suggest she'd used her relationship with Adam to get ahead. The timing was too convenient to be a coincidence. Susan Morrison. It had to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adam. Good morning. Want to grab breakfast before I head to the office? Helen stared at the message for a long moment. Then she texted back, can you come to my place instead? We need to talk. He arrived 30 minutes later, concern written all over his face. What's wrong? Helen told him about the call from the Seattle Business Journal. As she talked, she watched his expression shift from concern to anger. This is unbelievable, he said when she finished. They called to verify facts that aren't true. But now those questions are going to be in the article. Even though they verified it wasn't true, people are still going to wonder. They're going to think I'm using you to get ahead. Helen, anyone who knows you knows that's ridiculous. Do they? We've been dating for 2 months. Before that, my business was struggling. Now I have the Pike Place market contract, press coverage, and apparently I'm applying to an accelerator program run by your company. How does that look? Adam ran a hand through his hair. It looks like you're a talented businesswoman who's worked hard and gotten some well-deserved opportunities. Or it looks like I'm sleeping with a billionaire to advance my career. The words hung in the air between them. Adam's face went very still. Is that what you think? He asked quietly. No. But it's what other people are going to think. So what do you want to do? Helen had been asking herself that question all morning. I think we need to take a step back. Just until things settle down with the business. You want to break up. I want to protect what I've built. If we keep seeing each other publicly, every opportunity one gets is going to have questions attached to it. Every success is going to be attributed to you instead of my work. That's not fair to either of us. I know. But I don't see another option. Adam stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the street below. When he turned back, his expression was carefully controlled. I understand why you're scared. But I think you're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. What about the accelerator application? I'm not applying. It would just prove everyone's suspicions right. So you're going to let Susan Morrison win? You're going to let her false accusations dictate your decisions? I'm trying to protect my business. By giving up opportunities that could help it grow? That doesn't make sense, Helen. Nothing about this makes sense. 3 months ago, I was barely keeping my head above water. Now I'm dating a billionaire and fielding press inquiries and dealing with sabotage from competitors. It's too much, too fast. Adam was quiet for a long moment. If this is really what you want, I'll respect it. But I think you're letting fear make your decisions instead of logic. Maybe I am. But I've worked too hard to watch it all fall apart because people think I'm taking shortcuts. No one who matters thinks that. Everyone matters when you're trying to build a reputation. Adam picked up his keys from her coffee table. I should go. Adam, wait. He turned back, and the look on his face made Helen's chest ache. I care about you, she said. This isn't about that. I know. But it doesn't make it hurt less. After he left, Helen sat on her couch and cried for the first time since her father's funeral. Not because she thought she'd made the wrong decision, but because she thought she'd made the right one and it still felt terrible. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mama. Just checking in, baby girl. How are you doing? Helen stared at the message, thinking about her mama's house. About the loan she couldn't afford to default on. About the business she'd built from nothing in that very kitchen. She typed back, I'm okay, ma. Just dealing with some work stuff. Love you. The lie felt necessary. Her mama didn't need to know about the health department complaint, or Susan Morrison's sabotage, or the fact that Helen had just ended things with the first man she'd genuinely cared about in years. Some burdens you carried alone. Helen spent the rest of the day working. She prepped food for an event on Thursday. She returned client emails. She updated her financial projections. She did all the normal things that running a business required, and she tried not to think about Adam. It didn't work. That evening, Maya found her sitting in the kitchen after hours, staring at an untouched cup of coffee. Okay, what happened? Maya asked, sliding into the chair across from her. Helen told her everything. About the Seattle Business Journal call, about Susan Morrison, about the decision to step back from Adam. Maya listened without interrupting. When Helen finished, she was quiet for a moment. Can I be honest with you? Maya finally said. Please. I think you're doing exactly what Susan Morrison wanted you to do. What do you mean? She filed a false health complaint. That didn't work. So she planted questions about your relationship with Adam. And now you're pulling back from something that made you happy, and you're refusing to apply to a program that could help your business. She's not winning by destroying you. She's winning by making you destroy yourself. Helen opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. I'm not saying you're wrong, Maya continued. I get why you're scared. But you've spent 4 years building this business on your own merit. One relationship doesn't erase that. And if people want to think you're taking shortcuts, that says more about them than it does about you. But the article is going to say they investigated and found no evidence of improper influence. Right? Yes. So let it. You can't control what people think, Helen. You can only control your work. And your work speaks for itself. After Maya left, Helen sat alone in her kitchen and thought about what she'd said. About letting fear make decisions instead of logic. About giving Susan Morrison exactly what she wanted. She pulled out her laptop and opened the accelerator application. Then she pulled up Adam's number and stared at it for a long time. Finally, she texted him. Can we talk? The response came back immediately. Always. Your place or mine? Yours, if that's okay. I need to get out of my head. 20 minutes later, Helen was driving across the city to Adam's condo in Capitol Hill, her heart pounding and her mind racing through everything she wanted to say. She needed to tell him she'd been wrong. That fear had made her push away something good. That she wanted to try again, if he'd let her. She just hoped she hadn't ruined everything. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. Adam's building was one of those modern high-rises with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman who looked like he could double as security. Helen had been here twice before, but tonight it felt different. More intimidating somehow, now that she'd spent the afternoon pushing Adam away. The doorman recognized her and waved her through to the elevators. The ride up to the 15th floor felt too short. She wasn't ready. She didn't know what to say. The elevator doors opened, and Adam was standing in his doorway, waiting. He'd changed out of his work clothes into jeans and a dark green sweater that made his eyes look more blue than gray. His expression was cautious but hopeful. "Hi," he said. He stepped aside to let her in. The condo was exactly as she remembered. Minimalist but warm, with huge windows overlooking the city and bookshelves that actually had books on them. Not designer books chosen for their spines, but real books with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. "Can I get you something to drink?" Adam asked. "I have that wine you like." "I'm okay. I just need to talk to you." They sat on his couch, angled toward each other. Helen twisted her hands in her lap, trying to figure out where to start. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I panicked this morning, and I made it your problem when it wasn't." "Helen, let me finish. Please." She took a breath. "I've spent 4 years doing everything on my own. Building my business, solving my problems, not asking for help because I thought that made me weak. And then you came along, and you were kind and supportive and genuinely interested in my work, and it scared me." Adam was quiet, listening. "When David Park called about the article, all I could think was that people were going to assume I couldn't succeed without you. That everything I'd built would be dismissed because of our relationship. And instead of talking to you about it, I just decided we needed to break up." "Past tense?" Adam asked carefully. "I don't want to break up. I want to figure this out together. If you still want that too." Adam reached out and took her hand. "I want that. But I need you to understand something." "Okay. I can't fix all your problems. I can't make Susan Morrison go away, or control what articles say about you, or guarantee that no one will ever question your success. What I can do is be here. Support you. Believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. But only if you let me." Helen felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm not very good at letting people help. Even noticed." His voice was gentle, teasing. "But you're learning. You let me help at the kitchen last week. You're considering the accelerator program. That's progress. I'm still scared." "That's okay. I'm scared too." "Of what?" "Of caring about you this much. Of wanting this to work so badly that it terrifies me." He squeezed her hand. "The last time I let myself fall for someone, it ended badly. I told myself I wouldn't do it again. And then you got in my car in the rain and told me about your Costco membership and your scrappy little business, and I was gone. You were not gone from one car ride. Maybe not gone. But definitely interested. And then we had dinner, and you insisted on splitting the check even though you didn't have to, and you looked at me like I was just a regular person instead of a walking bank account. And yeah, I was gone." Helen laughed through her tears. "We're kind of a mess, aren't we?" "Maybe. But I like our mess." He pulled her close, and Helen let herself sink into him, breathing in the scent of his cologne and feeling the steady beat of his heart. They sat like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Finally, Helen pulled back enough to look at him. I want to apply for the accelerator program. Not because we're dating, but because it's a good opportunity and I'd be stupid to pass it up out of pride. Good. I think you'd be great for it. And I want to keep seeing you. Publicly. Let people think whatever they want to think. My work will prove itself. Adam similet. I like this plan. There's one more thing. What's that? I need to actually deal with Susan Morrison. Not confront her, but I can't just let this go. She filed a false health complaint. She tried to sabotage my reputation. There have to be consequences for that. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I talk to a lawyer. Document everything. And if she tries anything else, I'll be ready to take legal action. I know a good lawyer. She specializes in small business disputes. I can make an introduction if you want. Helen started to bristle, then stopped herself. That would be helpful. Thank you. Look at you, accepting help. I'm so proud. She shoved his shoulder lightly. Don't push it. He caught her hand and pulled her closer. Can I kiss you now? We've been broken up for 8 hours and I've hated every minute of it. We were never actually broken up. We just had a really terrible afternoon. Even worse. So can I kiss you? Instead of answering, Helen closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both making sure this was real. Then Adam's hand came up to cup her face, and the kiss deepened, and Helen stopped thinking about anything except how right this felt. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said quietly. I'll make dinner, we can watch a movie, and we can pretend today didn't happen. I have early prep tomorrow. I'll set an alarm. I'll drive you home at 5 in the morning if I have to. Just stay. Helen thought about her empty apartment, about going home alone to spiral in her own thoughts. Then she thought about staying here, with Adam, in this warm space where she felt safe. Okay. I'll stay. They ordered pizza because neither of them felt like cooking, and they watched a movie that Helen couldn't have summarized if her life depended on it because she spent most of it curled up against Adam's side, finally relaxed for the first time all day. Around 11, her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Boss just told me everything. You okay? Helen typed back, I'm good. With Adam. Fixed it. The response was immediate. Thank God. I didn't want to have to kill him. Helen showed the text to Adam, who laughed. Your assistant is protective. She's the best. I couldn't run the business without her. You should make her a partner. Helen looked at him. What? Maya. You said you couldn't run the business without her. So make her a partner. Give her equity, profit sharing, whatever structure makes sense. It'll give her more investment in the company's success, and it'll give you someone to share the load with. I can't afford to give up equity. You can't afford not to. What happens if Maya gets a better offer somewhere else? You'd be scrambling to replace her, training someone new, probably losing clients in the transition. But if she's a partner, she has a reason to stay. Helen turned the idea over in her mind. She'd been thinking of Riley's catering as her business, her responsibility, her burden to carry alone. But Adam was right. Maya had been with her for 2 years, had stuck around through the hard times when Helen couldn't always make payroll on time, had become essential to everything they did. I'll think about it, Helen said. That's all I ask. The next morning, Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, Adam drove her home at 5:30 so she could shower and change before heading to the kitchen. He kissed her goodbye in the car, and Helen found herself smiling the whole drive to work. Maya was already at the kitchen when Helen arrived, prepping vegetables for that evening's event. So, Maya said without looking up from her cutting board. You and the billionaire made up. We did. Good. Because if he'd actually broken your heart, I would have had to do something drastic. Like what? I don't know. Leave a bad Yelp review for one of his restaurants or something. Helen laughed. He doesn't own any restaurants. Then I would have figured something out. Maya finally looked up, her expression serious. I'm glad you're okay. You seemed really rough yesterday. I was. But I think I figured some things out. Helen spent the morning working, and during a break, she pulled Maya into her small office. I want to talk to you about something, Helen said. Maya's eyes went wide. If this is about me eating the leftover cake from Saturday's event, I'm sorry, but it was going to go bad and it's not about the cake. Though we should talk about that too. Helen smiled. I want to make you a partner. Maya stared at her. What? You've been here for 2 years. You know this business as well as I do. You're essential to everything we do. It doesn't make sense for this to be just my company anymore. I want it to be our company. Helen, I don't have money to buy in. I don't need money. I need your commitment. Your expertise. Your willingness to share the responsibility and the risk. Helen pulled out a folder she'd been working on that morning. I talked to my lawyer. We can structure it so you get 15% equity to start, with the option to increase to 25% over the next 3 years. Plus profit sharing based on performance. Maya's hands were shaking as she took the folder. Are you serious? Completely serious. You've earned this, Maya. And honestly, I can't keep doing this alone. I need a real partner. Maya read through the proposal, her eyes getting wider with each page. When she looked up, there were tears on her cheeks. Yes. Absolutely yes. Thank you for trusting me with this. They hugged, and Helen felt another weight lift from her shoulders. She was still learning how to not do everything alone, but she was learning. The Seattle Business Journal article came out on Friday, August 23, 2024. Helen read it 3 times, her coffee getting cold beside her. The article was good. Really good. Jennifer Park had written a thoughtful piece about Helen's journey, her food philosophy, and her rapid growth over the past few months. And yes, there was a paragraph about the questions that had been raised regarding her relationship with Adam Walker. But the way it was written made it clear that those questions had been investigated and found baseless. Margaret Chen was quoted extensively about why she'd chosen Riley's catering, emphasizing that it had been purely based on the quality of the proposal and that she hadn't even known Helen was dating Adam Walker until months after the contract was signed. The article ended with a quote from Helen, "I've built this business by being better, not cheaper. By taking risks and working harder than anyone else. I don't need shortcuts. I just need people to give me a fair chance to show what I can do." Within an hour of the article going live online, Helen's phone started ringing. 3 new client inquiries by noon. By the end of the day, she had 5 potential contracts to review. Adam texted her around 2. "Just read the article. You're kind of amazing, you know that?" Helen smiled at her phone. "I have my moments. Dinner tonight? I want to celebrate." "Can't. Maya and I are signing partnership papers and then getting very drunk on champagne. Tomorrow then. And Sunday I'm taking you to the San Juan Islands. No excuses this time. It's a date." That evening, Helen and Maya signed the partnership agreement at Helen's lawyer's office, then went to a wine bar in Capitol Hill and drank good champagne and made plans for the future. They talked about maybe expanding to a second kitchen. About hiring another full-time employee. About all the things that might be possible now that they didn't have to just survive, but could actually grow. "What about Adam?" Maya asked over their 3rd glass. "Where does he fit into all these plans?" "I don't know yet. We're taking it one day at a time." "But you love him." Helen paused, her glass halfway to her lips. "I haven't said that to him." "Maybe you should." The next morning, Helen woke up with a mild champagne headache and a text from Adam. "Picking you up at 8. Bring layers. It gets cold on the water." The drive to Anacortes took about 90 minutes. They caught the 9:30 ferry to Orcas Island, standing on the deck as the boat cut through the blue-gray water of Puget Sound. The late August morning was perfect, cool and clear, with the Olympics visible in the distance. "I can't believe we've lived in Seattle this long and never done this," Helen said, leaning against the railing. Adam stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. "We're doing it now. That's what matters." They spent the day exploring Orcas Island. They had lunch at a tiny restaurant overlooking the water, where Helen had the best clam chowder she'd ever tasted. They drove up to Mount Constitution and stood at the top, looking out at the San Juan Islands spread below them like scattered jewels. "I want to tell you something," Adam said as they stood there. "Okay. That day I drove you to Pike Place Market, I knew immediately there was something different about you. The way you talked about your business, the way you were nervous but determined. I wanted to know more. So you paid for my ride and asked me out." "I did. And every day since then, I've just wanted to know more. What makes you laugh? What you're scared of? What you dream about when you let yourself dream big." Helen turned to face him, her back against the railing. "I'm scared of failing," she said quietly. "Of letting down everyone who's believed in me. My mama, Maya, the clients who trust me. You. You could never let me down. I'm also scared of this. Of how much I care about you. Of what it means." Adam tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "What does it mean?" "It means I love you. And I'm terrified of that, but it's also the truest thing I know right now." Adam's whole face softened. "I love you too. Have for weeks, if I'm honest. I just didn't want to scare you off. I'm already scared. Might as well be scared together." He kissed her there on top of Mount Constitution, with the wind whipping around them and the island spread out below, and Helen felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty exactly, because life didn't work that way. But something close. The sense that whatever came next, they'd figure it out together. 3 weeks later, on September 15, 2024, Helen's mama turned 63. Helen and Adam threw her a surprise party at the house where Helen had grown up, inviting family and friends and neighbors who'd known her mama for decades. Helen made all her mama's favorite foods, including her daddy's famous ribs, and when her mama walked in and saw everyone gathered there, she cried happy tears and pulled Helen into a tight hug. "My baby girl," she whispered. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yeah, I did." Later, after the guests had eaten and the sun was setting over the backyard, Helen's mama pulled her aside. "I like him," she said, nodding toward where Adam was talking with Helen's uncle about the Seahawks' chances this season. "I like him too, Ma. He looks at you like your daddy used to look at me. Like you're the best thing that ever happened to him. It's still early. We're taking it slow." Her mama smiled. "Baby, there's no such thing as slow when it's right. Your daddy proposed to me after 3 months. We were married 6 months after that. When you know, you know." "How did you know?" "Because he made me laugh. Because he showed up when things were hard. Because he saw me, really saw me, and loved what he saw." She squeezed Helen's hand. "That's what I see when I watch you two together. So don't overthink it. Just let yourself be happy." 2 months later, on November 10, 2024, the Walker Technologies Accelerator Program announced its new cohort. Riley's Catering was one of the 20 businesses selected. The selection committee had made their decision based on Helen's application, her growth trajectory, and her potential for scaling. Adam had recused himself from any discussions about her company, and Helen had documentation to prove it. There were still whispers. A few comments online about nepotism and special treatment. But they were drowned out by the steady stream of positive press, new clients, and recognition for the quality of her work. Susan Morrison's catering company quietly closed in December. Helen heard through the grapevine that the false health complaint had been investigated by the state, and Susan had been fined and censured. She'd lost contracts as a result, and eventually just shut down. Helen felt no satisfaction in it. Just relief that she could move forward without looking over her shoulder. By January 2025, Riley's Catering had doubled its revenue from the previous year. Maya had hired 2 part-time employees, and they were seriously discussing opening a second location. And Helen had learned something important: asking for help wasn't weakness. Building something with other people instead of alone wasn't taking shortcuts. It was just smart business. On February 14, 2025, Valentine's Day, Adam took Helen back to the Walrus and the Carpenter, the restaurant where they'd had their first date. They sat at the same table in the back. They ordered the same food. And halfway through dinner, Adam reached across the table and took her hand. "I have something to ask you," he said. Helen's heart started pounding. "Okay. We've known each other for 8 months. We've been officially together for 7. And I know that's not a long time by some people's standards, but it's been long enough for me to know something with absolute certainty." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple ring, a single diamond on a platinum band. Classic and understated, exactly like something Helen would choose. "Helen Marie Riley, you are the smartest, strongest, most stubborn person I've ever met. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You make me want to be better. And I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" Helen looked at the ring, then at Adam's face, at the hope and love and slight nervousness in his expression. She thought about the past 8 months. About all the fears she'd overcome and the help she'd learned to accept and the partnership she'd built with Maya and the business she was growing and this man who'd seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." Adam slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. He came around the table and kissed her, and the other diners applauded, and Helen laughed through happy tears. "I love you," Adam said. "So much. I love you too." They stayed at the restaurant for another hour, making plans and dreaming about the future. A small wedding, they decided. Something intimate with just family and close friends. Maybe in the San Juan Islands, where they'd first said "I love you." When they finally left, walking out into the cold February night, Helen felt nothing but certainty. This was right. He was right. They were right together. 6 months later, on August 8, 2025, Helen Marie Riley married Adam James Walker on Orcas Island, on top of Mount Constitution where they'd first said "I love you." Her mama cried happy tears. Maya was her maid of honor. Adam's college friend David, the one who owned Elite Executive Services, was his best man. They wrote their own vows. Helen promised to let him help her, to share her burdens instead of carrying them alone, to love him through all the messy, complicated, beautiful parts of building a life together. Adam promised to see her, really see her, for exactly who she was. To support her dreams. To make her laugh. To show up when things were hard. They sealed their promises with a kiss as the sun set over the islands, turning the water gold and pink and orange. Riley's catering grew into Riley's hospitality group, with 3 locations and a staff of 20. Maya became chief operating officer. Helen's mama finally retired from her part-time job and spent her days testing new recipes and spoiling her future grandchildren. Adam and Helen bought a house in Queen and with a big kitchen and a view of the Sound. They hosted Sunday dinners for family and friends. They traveled when they could. They built a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. And sometimes, on rainy Seattle afternoons, Adam would drive Helen somewhere in his Mercedes, just the 2 of them, and they'd remember that day in June when she'd thought he was the driver and he'd fallen in love with a woman who talked about her scrappy little business and her Costco membership. "Best ride of my life," Adam would say. And Helen would smile and take his hand and agree. Because sometimes the best things started with a simple kindness on a rainy day. With someone showing up when you needed them. With choosing to be vulnerable instead of strong, to ask for help instead of doing it alone, to love someone even when it scared you. Helen had built her business by being better, not cheaper. And she'd built her life the same way. By being brave enough to accept help. By being smart enough to recognize a good thing when she found it. By being willing to take a chance on love, even when it terrified her. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue.